Today's video was selected for you by my gorgeous patrons, so thank you very much to them for making this selection. And if you would like to be involved in future video polls and also have access to the Discord, the one card riff video every month and other privileges as well, check out the tiers. I will leave all the information down below. Hey sugar dumplings, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be overthinking. I want to talk to you about a habit of mine that I know a lot of you also struggle with as well, and some witchy and not so witchy ways that I tend to find it's easier to deal with this habit. And the habit is just overthinking, just stewing the goddamn shit out of something. Yeah, that can be a real big thing for me in my reality. And I want to start by qualifying what I'm talking about in this video, okay? I'm a deep thinker. I go into complex thought processes. I like to really explore something, you know, with great depth, many layers to the way that I think about something. I might return to something many times and think about it multiple times. I'm definitely not talking about that. I don't think that is bad. And if I did think it was bad, I would be screwed because it's really just my natural way of being. What I'm talking about actually is the state in which you just like rethink and rehash and get yourself into a bit of an obsessed stew about something. You become fixated on it. It becomes disturbing to you in some way. It stops you from doing other things. It stops you from enjoying things. I'm talking about a lot of the time the process of getting frustrated by something that you can't do anything else to change necessarily, or you don't know how you are going to deal with what it is you're thinking about, but you can't seem to stop it. It's like you just keep picking that mental scab, you know? I'm talking about that because we can always do with a few tips and tricks on how to deal with that. That is not comfortable and that is not healthy. I am an overthinker. When I'm thinking about something, I can sometimes do it to death. When I'm worried about something, when I don't know what the outcome is going to be or what I want the outcome of something to be, when I feel like I don't have access to all of the facts, I can start making up the facts in my head. I go into different scenarios. I go into catastrophizing. I go into fantasizing. And I've had to pull myself up and out of this swamp a few fucking times, okay? I do deal with cognitive distortions, like catastrophizing is one of them. We'll go into them later in the video so you can identify them if you don't already. I do deal with depression and other mental health issues which cause things like existential dread. So there are reasons why I tend to veer into overthinking, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing that I can do about it. And whatever you are grappling with, I would really strongly and deeply suggest that doesn't mean that there is nothing that you can do to try to like lessen the effect of overthinking that comes from whatever your diagnoses are, whatever you're going through in life, you know, whatever type of personality you are, whatever neurodivergence you deal with. You're still entitled to have a fucking good old crack at sort of reducing the amount of overthinking you do. So that's what this video is all in aid of. I'm going to talk about some ways that I do it, okay? I want to talk about 5 not so witchy ways. I mean, you could definitely zhuzh it up with a little bit of witchy vibes, but essentially the first 5 ways I'm going to talk about that work for me, that have definitely been helpful to me, are the not so witchy ways. Then we're going to get into the more witchy stuff that I have tried that has been successful as well to help me with overthinking. None of this is a perfect science, and for some people the way that you deal with overthinking will be vastly different to me, but this is what's worked for me, okay? These are the things that I find I have in my toolkit now. There are 10 of them, and the first one is let yourself overthink, but time it. I know it might sound ridiculous to some people, but I tend to find that when I put on an alarm or a timer, right, on my phone, and I say to myself, I'm going to tidy until the alarm goes off. I'm going to study this until the alarm goes off, you know. When the alarm goes off, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to go and have a shower and go to the gym. Whatever it might be, that is me really pragmatically parenting myself, because otherwise I will lose track of time, because I am like the Mad Hatter at the fucking tea party. I am down the rabbit hole. I'm away with the goddamn fairies. So I do actually need some kind of like overlord, some mechanical overlord that tells me when it's time to go and do something different, to go and do something else, to go and do the next thing that I had planned. I also find that I'm less inclined to argue with the timer. If I decide like I'm going to set a timer and I'm going to eat after I've had that timer, I'm going to set a timer and then I'm going to get back to everybody on WhatsApp. I'm not going to do it now because I've got stuff to do. If I use that it tends to work, you know? I tend to be able to have told myself something from the parental angle. And when the timer goes off, that's my inner parent coming back to the front and going, oh, it's time for the next activity. I think with overthinking, this can be just as valid. So set an alarm, and for all of the time, from the time that you set the alarm to the time it goes off, you are allowed to stew the shit out of it. You're allowed to go there in your head, okay? You can do journaling. You can talk to a friend about the situation. You can start messaging several friends about the situation. You can lie in the bath or on your bed, looking up at the ceiling, just pining and worrying. You're allowed to catastrophize. You're allowed to fantasize. You're allowed to go into all the different avenues that you imagine that things might go, how you want it to go, how you don't want it to go. What specifically are your worries about it? And when that timer goes off, you stop dead, you go and you do something else. This can be very helpful because I think it's realistic, right? It's realistic that sometimes we overthink things, and it's realistic that we may actually need to just make room to overthink things instead of trying to stop immediately and stop dead. Sometimes that's not going to work. Have you ever been really worried about something or overthinking something or wondering about something, and you go to someone and you tell them and they go, oh, just stop thinking about it. Just forget you're obsessing. Just stop thinking about it. Just do something else. Just focus on something else. I find that so piss annoying. I never go to that type of person for advice ever again. It's like, you know what? I needed you to hold some space for me while I had my little freak out. And if you're not prepared to do that, then I know never to come to you with my shit again. Because you are not a space holder, and thank you for letting me know. You know, sometimes you need to have a little vent and a little pine about something or a little worry, and go round in a little circle, a little conversational circle. And no, it's not that strategic. It doesn't look that sensible. It's not going to get you to the answer, but it's going to help that you just went there for a bit and you were like, this is just driving me crazy, right? So if somebody immediately is like, oh, just stop, that's not helpful. It's like, you know what, it might be helpful for my nervous system though. So I think in the same way, if we try and just stop dead before we've really gone there and overthunk, then it can not be good for us sometimes. So I think for me, setting a timer, this is really, I've done this for years, guys. I've done this for 10 years now. Ever since my mid-20s, veering into my late 20s, I've been doing this. I set a timer and I'm like, okay, for this time, I'm allowed to think all the thoughts that I want to think. I'm allowed to worry about all the things I'm worried about. I'm allowed to journal about it. I'm allowed to obsess. And when that timer goes off, that's it then, until I decide again that I'm going there. Why would you do that? Because overthinking kind of wrecks stuff. It's a fly in the ointment. It stops you from focusing on other things. It disempowers you. So give yourself a dose of it and then take it away from yourself. The second thing that I tend to do when I am overthinking, guys, is I ask myself, what are you trying to do? And is there any possible way that you can do it? And by that, I mean, what are you trying to achieve from overthinking? What is the point of the overthinking right now? And then that second question, is there anything you can do to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve? That's when you start to think about the action. If there is no action to be taken, darling, then that's the end of that, For example, right, if I'm overthinking something and I ask myself the question, what am I trying to do? What is this overthinking in aid of, The answer might be, well, I'm trying to figure out what the other person is thinking. I'm overthinking what it is that they're thinking because I want to know what they're thinking. Then you ask yourself the question, is there any way to achieve that? So in my case, it would be, is there any way for me to know what the other person is thinking? There will be one of two answers to that question. My answer will either be, yeah, it's time to bite the bullet and just ask them what they're thinking. Or it will be, no, because I don't feel like it's really my business, or I don't feel like I know them well enough, or I feel like it might open a can of worms I'm not ready for. Fine, then that's your answer. You cannot know what they're thinking yet because you're not prepared to ask. Let it go. Loosen your grip, If it's the first answer that it's time for me to just ask them straight up, just bite the bullet, then I have my action. I have my action plan. Let's think of another example. Let's say I ask myself, what am I trying to do? By going into this overthinking, what the fuck am I trying to achieve? And if the answer is, I'm trying to figure out what my next move is in this situation, trying to figure out what action I'm going to take. Okay, how will you achieve that? Is there any way that you can achieve that? Can you talk to someone who's an expert in that field? Do you need to research something? Do you need to run something by somebody else so you can know what their plan of action is? Do you need something to be clarified for you in order to be able to make this decision? Do you actually need to wait until a specific date on the calendar for you to make any decision whatsoever, because it's only at that date that you will have access to the information that you require? So you're starting to think about strategy then. You're starting to be like, actually, I could research that and that would help me to figure out my next move. Or you're thinking, you know what, I can't figure out my next move yet because I'm waiting for someone else to get their arse in gear. And at that point, I will know. So you're really going into like, what is the strategy? And if there is nothing to be done, then you have your answer. Right now, there's nothing to be done. Let me stop overthinking. But if there is an action that can be taken, take the action. Stop overthinking and take the action, you know? It's really, I really try and simplify and boil things down like that. Otherwise, I get myself all in a tizzy, my darlings, and I could be in a tizzy for days, frankly. Number 3 way that I deal with overthinking, I go down a totally unrelated rabbit hole. This is hard to start, but it's addictive once you actually manage to get started. Once you find that groove in the wood, the unrelated rabbit hole is heavenly. The other night I was overthinking the unholy shit out of something, guys, honestly. And suddenly I thought to myself, you know what? I really want to know more about the history of Cyprus. I just really want to understand what happened back there in 1974 and what happened before that and what happened before that. Like, I want to understand it more intricately. So I'm going to go online and I'm going to watch some documentaries about the history of Cyprus. You know, so I did that. A while ago, a few weeks ago, I was overthinking the crap out of something. And I was like, do you know what? I really want to know about certain fashion brands. I know there's a YouTuber, a male fashion YouTuber, whose videos I've been really meaning to get into. I'm just going to give myself an hour to like dive into research about that. Sometimes that can really just take the cognitive energy, the frustrated, tense, sort of, I don't know, I want to say frisky, but that's the wrong word. What kind of energy is it? It's like fractious energy that I've gotten from overthinking and apply it to something different. If you find that you still have a tab open in your head, right? You're researching the literary works of Shakespeare or whatever, and you're like, okay, this is fine. I've been meaning to do this for a while, but I'm still overthinking. Get a book out, get notepaper out, open a Word document on your computer, and actually start to take notes on the research that you're doing, and do that for at least 20 minutes, half an hour, because it really even more immerses you in the research you're doing, and therefore gives you another avenue, a way to let off steam. You know, you're taking the cognitive energy you were investing into the overthinking and you're just reapplying it somewhere. And at the end, you are more fun at a dinner party because you have more knowledge than you did when you started the research. You might even want to say to yourself, you know, I will overthink this just as soon as I've learned everything I need to know about this historical figure that I don't know anything about. Like, I will research this. I mean, I will overthink this, right? But only after I've like researched this thing, only after I've learned 5 things about Romania. And only after that will I consider coming back to the drawing board and overthinking. And a lot of the time you won't want to, because you would have energized your brain in a different way. It really, really works. It's helped me a lot. And it's helped me learn loads of random pieces of information about things. Honestly, there's so many things in this world that I wish I knew more about, that I think, oh, I'll research that at some point. Oh, I need to get into that at some point. When is the time that I do most of it? Late at night when I'm over fucking thinking and I'm just like, hey, if you've got all of this energy to keep turning yourself around in this stew of overthinking, the least you could do, my darling, is research crop rotation in the 14th century. That was a Young Ones reference for anyone who didn't get it. And if you did get it, hi, do you want to go into communal living with me? Oh dear. So yeah, give yourself a mental mission. You know, I tend to find that does the trick. The 4th suggestion for overthinking is such a basic one, and it's not going to work for everybody, but for me it really helps. Have a goddamn power nap. Treat yourself to a nap. There's science that proves that actually sleeping on it actually makes a difference. And I tend to find for myself that when I'm really overthinking and I've got myself into the stew, climbing out has a lot to do with lying down for a bit and just letting myself fall asleep. It also eases any physical tension that I have from overthinking. And with my back injury, I tend to find that when I'm overthinking, I actually get very tense in my shoulders, which makes my compensatory secondary injury go off. I've got like torticollis in my neck from whenever my lower spine is playing up. Oh, it's a nightmare, darlings. Don't go snowboarding. That's my advice to you. Foolhardy 19-year-old me went snowboarding and my back has never heard the end of it. But yeah, I tend to find that I hold tension and I don't realize I'm holding tension because I'm too focused on what I'm overthinking about. So a nap also helps in that regard as well. It just helps me get a lot less tense. And when I wake up, I've usually got some sort of plan for what I want to do upon waking, which is really helpful as well, you know. So definitely consider that. Number five thing that I do that really helps me so much with overthinking is I recognize my cognitive distortions, okay? You can go on to Google if you do not know what cognitive distortions are, or if you do know what they are, but you can't bring them to mind right now. You can go on Google. Google is your friend. It will tell you all kinds of cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are basically just patterns of perspective that lean towards the negative or the catastrophizing or the dramatic, the histrionic. And, you know, our brain like falls into these neural pathways of thinking that way, even though there might not be any truth to it. I think that it's obvious that everyone falls into cognitive distortions at some point or another, but some of them can be chronic and they can be the classic ones that you exhibit, okay? So for example, all right, here are some cognitive distortions. I couldn't think of any, well, I can think of some off the top of my head because they're the ones I deal with, but I couldn't think of them all, so I grabbed my handy dandy Positive Psychology for Dummies book, which I know has the cognitive distortions in it and which I've had for many, many moons because I find positive psychology very helpful. Okay, so here are some cognitive distortions. Overgeneralization. You see a single negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. For example, it happened once, so it's always going to happen. Discounting the positive. You make a negative, you reject positive experiences by insisting they don't count. Someone says you did a good job and you think they're just being kind, or anyone can do it. Mind reading. This is one of my cognitive distortions. You arbitrarily decide that someone is reacting negatively to you and you don't bother to check it out. 100%. I mind read all the time. I'm like, they're thinking this, or they probably did this because they want me to react like this. Or, you know, it's not even that I think always that a person is responding negatively to me. I just think I know what people are thinking. And actually that is not always helpful. Also, fortune telling is one, a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. You predict that something is going to happen a certain way, and so quite often it might even tend to happen that way because you've predicted it. I also think of it as just future prediction. So I don't really so much use the term fortune telling, but I tend to predict the future. I predict outcomes. It could be to do with me being a pro card slinger forever and a day. For sure, that could be part of it. It's also because I struggle a lot with anticipatory nostalgia, which is where I miss something even when it's still happening, or I think about the end of something and how sad it's going to be, even when it's literally right there in the palm of my hand and I'm enjoying it and it's a long way from ending. I have a real problem with like going to the end. I skip to the end in my brain, and that is a prediction of outcome. That is me future predicting. You know, that's a cognitive distortion. It stops me from enjoying the moment. It makes me overthink. Emotional reasoning is a common cognitive distortion. You assume that your negative emotions reflect the way things really are. For example, you did something foolish and you therefore believe that you're stupid. Personalizing is a cognitive distortion, taking everything personally, taking the blame even when it's not your fault. You did not get the information you needed from a colleague in time, so you blame yourself entirely for being late with the report. Jumping to conclusions is a big cognitive distortion. You make a negative assumption even though there are no definite facts that convincingly support your conclusion. So there are lists of these cognitive distortions. They're basically just cognitive patterns of perspective that are unhelpful and are not always based on the truth, but we get ourselves into this habit of thinking that way. And you can read through a list of cognitive distortions and literally see the ones often. If you are conscious and you are doing your work, as we like to say in psycho-spirituality, if you're doing your work and you're conscious of the way that you operate, I swear you will read through those cognitive distortions and be like, well, that one's me. I cannot deny. And that really, really, really helps me with overthinking, because I'll look at the way I'm thinking about something and I'll be like, are you exhibiting any of those classic cognitive distortions, Kellyanne? Because if so, you can drop that bone right now and do something the fuck else with your time. Okay, now let's get witchy. The actions from 6 to 10 are more in the witchy area of things, okay? I do a lot of witchcraft and use a lot of techniques that I picked up within the craft to help me with everyday shit, to help me with my brain, to help me with my mental well-being, to help me with my physical well-being. I use it for all kinds of different things. The first thing I want to say, number 6, I use this very, very often. Pray about it. Pray about it, baby. And what I mean by pray could be anything. You could be asking for help from a deity or guide or ancestor. You could literally just be confiding in the being about what is going on. You know, you could literally be like laying out the different aspects of it. It could just be a chat, basically. You could lay the issue at the foot of the disembodied intelligence and say, I leave this today here. You know, I want to commit to not stewing in this. And so I've brought it to you so that you can witness it and you can witness my commitment to letting it go, you know. My friend's mum always says, give it to the angels. I know that's a thing some people say, give it to the angels, darling, you know. And I kind of think that my praying on it is a little bit like that. A lot of my praying on something that I'm overthinking as well is not necessarily anything to do with petitioning a being for anything that I want. When I go to Mary or when I go to hell, I'm not asking for the answer. I'm not asking for a specific outcome. I'm not asking for help necessarily. I'm going to them because I want to sort of imbibe their archetype and their energy as a mirror for something that's already inside of me. And I do the same with Saint Joan of Arc as well. I work closely with Saint Joan of Arc. And I really I look at her of a morning. And with my tea, I sit at my altar in the morning. I look at Joan of Arc every day, pretty much every day. Okay, not always. I've got 3 altars now in my home. So, oh, and by the way, Patreon has spoken and they want a witchy altar tour. So that is coming. And I will be showing all 3 of my altars. So hang on to your hats for that, baby cakes. And you have my patrons to thank. I'm going to be going into a deep dive on my altars. But anyway, I sit at my main working altar. I'm looking at St. Joan. And I'm just thinking, where is Joan of Arc in me? Where do I need to locate that energy? I feel it's within me to be that armor-clad, daring, gutsy, you know, sort of like fool energy of like beginner's mind and the sense of mission. But I'm lacking it. I don't feel it. And so I imbibe the energy and the image and the thought and the story of her life. And I just think about where I can apply it to myself. I'm not really petitioning her for anything so much as I am figuring out where inside of me is Joan of Arc. How can I bring it to the fore? So a lot of it is just that. But when I pray on something, and sometimes I straight up just pray the rosary, you know, I take my fractious, tense, overthinking energy and I just go to the rosary and I go through the mysteries. I pray a set of mysteries. It takes me 17 minutes. It costs me 17 minutes. And what it gives to me is priceless. The treasure it gives to me is priceless. You know, so sometimes it's just as simple as that. I pray on it. And that's really one thing that I think is so good for overthinking that we might not necessarily consider when we are in overthinking mode. That might not come to us. So I'm saying it here in case anybody needs to hear it, okay? Pray on that shit. Whatever that means to you. If you don't like the word pray, then commune. You know, commune is another word that I use. I am communing with my deity. I am communing with my matron goddess. What does that mean? It means I'm engaged with her. I'm at my hell altar and I am engaged. I am thinking about her, I am talking to her, I'm inviting her to be with me, I'm imbibing her strength, I'm thinking about her story, and we're having a fucking moment. You know, I'm not on my phone, I'm not talking to anyone else, I'm talking to her, I'm with her. So if you don't like the word pray, commune is a good word, you know? Connect, engage with your beings. What else? What else is the relationship about if it's not to be able to go there and be yourself? Just be in your pure, raw authenticity. Yes, of course, we honour our beings, but also, don't we have a close connection with them, or is that not what we're aiming for? And aren't close connections about the honesty to go in your state of fraught energy and say, I'm in a state of fraught energy and I just need to be here with you? Thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for strengthening me in this mad, mad time. The 7th tip that I have for overthinking, my darlings, is cord cutting. I think a lot of people only think of cord cutting spells as being to do with severing the etheric bonds, the cords that exist emotionally and energetically between you and another human being or a group of human beings. You know, you can cut the cord between yourself and a friend. You can cut the cord between yourself and a coven, between yourself and a workplace, between yourself and even a previous location, like cutting the cords between you and a previous home, for example, or a previous country that you were living in. But I think what doesn't get spoken about so much, and what's really interesting, is the notion that we can cut the cord between ourselves and a thought process. We can actually say, okay, I'm going to work spellcraft to sever the strength of the bond that exists between me and this thought that is fixating me. For me, cord cuttings are best done in threes. That's just the way that I work. I tend to find that, yes, sometimes the first cord cutting does the trick, but I get mightily emotionally connected to people, to places, to thoughts, to dreams that I have, to desires that I have. So for me, I don't expect the first cord cutting to work miracles, but by the third one, most of the etheric bonds, if not all of them, will be completely severed. It really depends on the situation, how I feel about it, how far am I from what's happened, and what else is going on, what other variables are at play. So for me, cord cuttings are like a 3-part, they're a 3-course meal, cord cuttings. But whatever you feel about cord cuttings, if you've never done one, again, Google is your friend, YouTube is your friend. You can check out all the info about it. I'm not going to go into it masses here. But cord cutting is a very, very classical form of magic that can really work wonders. And if you've done it many times before, but you've never done it in relation to a mindset, I'm telling you, baby, you're missing a trick. So get on with your bad witchy self and get that shit done. Number 8 would be any other form of magic. There are different forms of magic that I think can be really potent when it comes to dealing with fixated thoughts. For example, box magic is a really good one. I love using boxes. I love writing down the obsessed thought that I'm having and then putting it in a box, putting other things in the box, like weighing it down with stones, and then I bind it with ribbon, and I put a stone on top of it, and I put the death card on top of it, and I put my hands over it, and I say, you are now encased. I have enclosed you. You do not follow me. When I leave this altar, I leave you the fuck behind, sunshine. That kind of thing. Box magic is great. Don't worry, when you reopen the box, you are not releasing the thought back to you. That's not how it works. It will have lost its potency. Imagine putting something fresh and alive into a box and then knowing that it's in there withering. It's withering. Okay, that's part of the magic. So box magic is good. Poppet magic is really good. Grab your poppet that represents you, put some protection rope around that shit, put some crystals in there, sprinkle some lavender heads over for peace and serenity and calmness, and then put your hands over the poppet and say, I am not tormented by this thought. I am free of this thought for the day. Actually, I'm going to think some other thoughts which are going to be really juicy. And then if it was me, I would pop a little bit of orange oil on my head or some orange zest, or I'd put something over the head to represent that, actually, I'm having other thoughts today. So fuck you, obsessive thought. That's not happening today. I'm giving myself a break. So poppet magic is really, really good for that kind of shit. I would also say you can use sigils, you can use any kind of other shit that you want to use to release a thought from you. I know a lot of you know what servitors are. If you don't know what servitors are and you would like my take on them from a long time ago, I will leave a video down below about servitors and thought forms and stuff. But I do think it's very credible to have a servitor to help you specifically with overthinking. So you might want to consider designing one. Might it be possible that you need a magical thought form that you can call upon to help you loosen your grip on an obsessive thought, or to help you loosen your grip in any situation where you've gone into overthinking and you're leaning into that tendency to think something to death and it's really kind of bothering you, it's annoying you, Because if you know that you could use a thought form for that, a servitor, a little magical helper that you can activate to come and specifically engage with you on loosening a thought so you can kind of get past it, definitely design a servitor, Make sure that you have that wonderful astral helper in the toolkit so that when you're going into overthinking, if you know that's a tendency for you, you can be like, you know what, I'm going to call up that servitor. I'm going to activate that servitor that I made earlier, Blue Peter style. Here's one I made earlier. I made that servitor for just this exact situation where I'm just doing something to death. I can't seem to get around it. I can't seem to get over it. That's what this thought form is for, to come and help me to release my grip. So definitely consider making a servitor if that is your bag. And finally, the 10th tip I would give that is more witchy for overthinking is, of course, divination, okay? But I'm very, very careful. I am really, really careful, guys, doubly careful about what I am asking for Okay, so instead of, if I'm overthinking something and I go to the cards, for example, I do not want to ask the cards something like, what should I do in this situation? What is the truth of the situation? What do I need to see? Because a lot of the time for me, that is only going to muddy the water, because I'm already in a state of overthinking, which is affecting my nervous system. It's already affecting my behavior. I've already been thinking about this to death. So instead, I would ask the cards, how can I let this go right now? How can I help myself loosen the grip on this thought that I'm having? How can I relax? What do I need to focus on instead? At other times, in other situations, when I'm just thinking something that I need to deal with, and I grab the cards, of course I will ask things like, what is the truth of this? What do I need to see differently? What strengths can I use in this situation? What can I expect in the next few weeks with this situation? I will ask myself all those kinds of questions. But if I'm overthinking already and I've gotten myself into a tiz, I'm probably more likely to ask, how can I help myself with my overthinking? I am overthinking. I do not need to think even more by laying out 10 fucking cards and being like, oh, it could be that. It could be, no. I don't want that in that moment. What I really want in that moment is like, how can I calm the fuck down? That's what I want to know. So what I would say with divination is it can be really good. It can definitely give you some conclusions that you will believe and you will go with, and that can help you to kind of drop the tension around whatever you're overthinking. But if you know you've already been overthinking a thing for fucking days before you pull your cards out, maybe consider just asking the cards, I'm overthinking, what do I need for my mental well-being? Because sometimes that can be more the right way to go in that situation. Darlings, everybody's relationship with overthinking is different. It can be exacerbated by different factors, obviously. Some people have diagnoses that make them more prone to overthinking. As I mentioned at the beginning, that's definitely me. Some people deal with neurodivergence that makes their relationship to overthinking sometimes highly necessary and sometimes maddening, depending on what is going on with you and what the other variables are. You might not feel that you can stop your overthinking or that you want to. But if it is making you feel sick, then can I suggest that that is a ride that you might at least try to get off? Don't torment yourself unnecessarily. If it's making you feel like shit, please try at least one of these tips. The discipline to stop overthinking is definitely one that is built over time. I think it's grown over a lot of time. It's not consistent all the time either. So if you fail with it at a certain point and you're like, you know what, I've been overthinking this all day and none of the things I tried worked, or I didn't even try anything, I just let myself spend hours obsessing over this. Don't be angry with yourself. Like I have days where I'm really good. As soon as I see that I'm overthinking, and as I said at the beginning, overthinking just literally means thinking in a not helpful way, in an obsessive way, when you've already done what can be done or there is nothing to be done. That's what overthinking is. It's not having a deep thought process that goes on for ages. That's fine. But when it's ceased to become useful and it's obsessing, then it's overthinking, right? And I think sometimes with my overthinking, I can't always stop. But sometimes I see it really quickly and I'm like, oh, that's overthinking. Hang on, let me put my tools into motion, because I don't want to do that. But I think even if you can't stop overthinking, sometimes you can still at least be doing something fun. So if you're overthinking, try to be overthinking while you are like redesigning your bedroom colours or playing crazy golf or whatever the fuck it is you want to do while you're also overthinking. Try and have some fun while you're doing it, Decorate your planner. Just have a nice time. Try on some clothes. Listen to some old albums you've been meaning to listen to. Learn the lyrics to your favourite hip-hop track. Like, okay, fine, you're overthinking, you can't close that tab, but at least at the same time have some quality of life, Darlings, I am going to be making an Afterthoughts episode that will be attached to this video. Afterthoughts episodes are only for my doll faces and Pop-Tarts over on Patreon. And this particular Afterthoughts episode will go further into the overthinking of overthinking. I'm going to talk about 3 of the main ways in which I tend to overthink. I'm going to talk about how overthinking can be linked to people pleasing majorly. I'm definitely going to talk about, what else am I going to talk about? Where are my Afterthoughts notes? Oh, I'm going to talk about, that 70% of my overthinking is caution and not wanting to wreck something. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of talking about what you are overthinking with other people. Yes, it can be really good to talk things out with others, but sometimes it's detrimental. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. So if you're interested in more of my in-depth thoughts on overthinking, join us over on Patreon. There are loads of other aspects of the Patreon membership that make it a very good use of money if you have the money to spare in your budget. Don't forget, I'm always available, my darlings, for readings, sessions, card slinger mentoring, all that good jazz. I am very reliable, dependable, and affordable. You can always find me over on my website. So please come along and do that. And until next time I appear on this channel, very much love, darlings, and blessed be. Mwah.